Happy Tuesday, everybody. I think it's Tuesday. Mac Engel, sports columnist extraordinaire, and owner of many second place finishes, as well as runner-ups for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Here for another exciting episode of Cowboys Overtime on StarTelegram.com. I am joined by Mr. Football Know-It-All, Emmy Award winner, Mr. Nick Harris. Nick, it's great to see you again, as always. It's been a long time since we talked, almost 48 hours. What is the hat you're wearing? I couldn't figure out what that logo is.
Birmingham Barons.
Oh, Michael Jordan's team.
There you go.
Right.
I forgot it was Michael Jordan's team when I ordered it. I just thought it was a nice, cool hat, and then it came in, and I happened to be wearing it with a Michael Jordan North Carolina shirt, and I walked in somewhere. I was like, "You must be a big Michael Jordan fan." The hat, the shirt, and it didn't really process until later. I was like, "Oh yeah, the hat too." I didn't even think about that. So I'm actually, if you ask my position in the debate, I am a LeBron guy, so it's strange that
really
I have a lot of Jordan stuff. I love Jordan. Phenomenal player. There's nothing wrong with being the second best basketball player of all time, though. There's nothing wrong with that. And Jordan fans.
Do you want to do this? Because we can just push this entire episode into the ocean and just talk about debating LeBron versus. I'll say this: Michael was the better player. LeBron has had the better career.
Okay. I understand where you're going with that. But when you talk about LeBron's impact with assists, with defense, now granted, Michael Jordan was a great defensive player in his own right. He won Defensive Player of the Year awards. But I think if you're talking about the over-encompassing game, I still have to give it to LeBron. I think Jordan is the better scorer, though, by far. Better scorer. I think he's better.
Have you ever done – now, the thing I hate about these – I love these debates, but I hate these debates because you're splitting – an eyelash, right?
For sure.
I mean, you're talking about two phenomenal players. And I heard Marv Albert say this once, the longtime sportscaster. And, he had called Michael Jordan's heyday games, both with the Bulls and then certainly with the Dream Team, the original Dream Team. And his point about Jordan was, if you took that player and gave him the advantages that exist today in today's training and all that other stuff, he said he would have killed everybody. And now there's one part to Jordan's game that didn't really exist. And I don't know if you ever have fun with this on probasketball.com, probasketballreference.com or any of those sports encyclopedia websites. When you do a jump into some of those numbers and see how few three-pointers Michael Jordan attempted, or even Larry Bird. Yeah. Larry Bird is regarded as the greatest three-point shooter, one of all time. He didn't take very many threes.
Yeah.
Not by today's standards. But the one advantage to me, so I think if you took Michael and put him in, or any of those guys, Jordan, all of them, and you put him in today's game, I think he'd still be just killing it. And it would even be more lethal because at one point in his career, he became a phenomenal jump shooter. That's where he became he became even better. And your point about LeBron is, I can't really argue it. The one advantage LeBron is, he is a physical freak phenomenon. I'm not sure we've ever seen in a basketball uniform ever.
Yeah,
I mean, he's just a freak. And the guy's an NFL tight end. He's not even an NFL tight end. I've never seen anything like him.
Yeah.
So he did have that one advantage. Now Michael had hands of a 7-foot man. He did. That was one thing about him. If you watch him play, sometimes he would take the ball and do that in front of defenders because his hands were so large. He could do things at a 6'6", that normally 6'6" guys couldn't do because his hands were so big. But I just look at what Jordan did, and a lot of it's era and timing and all that. But LeBron, and I think even LeBron would say it, LeBron isn't LeBron without what Michael Jordan did. And there's one guy in this debate that gets totally lost, and that's Kobe Bryant.
Yeah. I would put Kobe in the top 5.
There's one thing that LeBron could do that Michael couldn't, because LeBron could alter shots. I mean, I think about his NBA Finals block of Andre Iguodala. Michael Jordan can't make that play.
No.
Not that Michael Jordan couldn't block shots. He could block shots, but not like LeBron. So it's a fun debate. It's a great debate. And obviously, I was never a Michael Jordan fan because I grew up in Indiana and I was a Pacers fan. So I was never a Michael Jordan fan. But if I look at if you're talking about If you're and here's the other argument. I've heard this one. If you're picking first in the draft, Michael Jordan's 20 years old, LeBron's 20 years old, and they're both coming out of high school. You and I both know LeBron's going number one every year, right?
Yeah.
He's 6'9".
Yeah.
But I am curious, since you opened this can of worms, why do you go with LeBron over Michael Jordan?
I do think the physicality, the overall game is better. I think the longevity, it really does matter in this conversation. If we talk about the career, it has to be part of it. I think him being able to play at the level he's playing at into his 40s is a big part of the conversation as well. And it doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. So it's weird because we are probably 2-3 seasons max away from LeBron calling it quits, but he's not performing like it. He's still averaging well over 20 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists. I mean, he's still playing really well. I think that's
the one part of it I get tired is people who don't like, and I understand. I do kind of get it, but I'm like, we're not appreciating this guy enough.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy was anointed as the king as a teenager, and he's done it. What are the odds of that?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think enough people have appreciated how great he is. Anyways, all right, we got to go into the Cowboys because the Cowboys on Sunday did avoid an absolute disaster by rallying to defeat the New York Giants in overtime 40-37. What it could have been an absolute fiasco. The Cowboys came into the game 0-1, having narrowly lost a game in the NFL season opener at Philadelphia. Cowboys come in as a 5.5-point favorite, most lines that I saw, against a Giants team that looked horrific in week 1. However, the Giants' Russell Wilson decides, you know what, I'm going to be 25 years old again, and I'm going to look like I am a player who was so good in Seattle for a good long time. And he cut up the Cowboys' defense like it didn't even exist. Nick, can you describe to me, like I'm a third grader, what the reaction and temperature around this team would have been had the Cowboys actually lost this game, because they were dangerously close to doing just that?
Yeah, it wouldn't have been good. I mean, not only starting 0-2, but 0-2 in your division, and then the second loss being one against a team that picked top 3 in the draft last year. You expect to be picking top 5 in the draft again next year. It was a game that they should have won handily, and they're lucky that they came away with a narrow victory. But look, they expected to win the game, and so when they came off the field, there was still celebrations being had. But I don't think the celebrations were worthy of being carried on much further than midnight on Sunday. They were back in the facility on Monday, had a long meeting of corrections, and that defensive meeting is what I was told. So there's a lot of things to figure out defensively. Offensively, man, they can score in bunches, but where does the consistency come from? In that first half, it took a long time for that Cowboys team to even get a first down. It took it till the 12-minute mark of the second quarter. And then moving forward into the second half, it was nothing but touchdowns and big, long field goals for Brandon Aubrey. So how do you sustain that over the course of a game? I think that's going to be big for them, because when you go 72 minutes without scoring a touchdown, but from week 1 to week 2, that's eventually going to run into some issues if you do that again at some other point during the season. So you're just kind of lucky it balanced out in that time frame. But vibes would not have been good. No.
So they won, and I had a thought, and I think I even said this to you when I was sitting next to you at the game. It was almost like they believed their own headlines after a loss. I think the mood and the reaction after that week 1 loss in Philadelphia was really optimistic. Like, this team looks pretty good, actually, and they might be able to do some things. Now, I know there's also the added thread of it was a noon kickoff, and sometimes teams that are used to playing late, sometimes getting up early and all that other stuff, they do have a little bit of harder time sometimes. And I'm giving excuses, but is there any part of you, Nick, that when you watched that team on Sunday thought this is a team that got full of itself after a narrow loss on the road against the defending Super Bowl champion?
I don't think it was necessarily that. I think it was just there were more issues defensively than I think this team realized. Mm-hmm. And, we saw it at points in training camp. We saw it at points in the week 1 loss to the Eagles. I think about that 51-yard bomb to Jahan Dotson. Maybe that was a sign of things to come, and certainly proved to be the case against the Giants. But man, there are a ton of issues. I don't think there's as many issues in the defensive front as people realize. Now, sure, a better pass rush can definitely help things on the back end. But if you have an average pass rush, you should still have an average back end. And they are not even close to having an average back end at this point.
Well, let's get into it. You mentioned defensive issues. There were a lot of them on Sunday. Russell Wilson, 30 of 41 for 450 yards, 3 touchdowns and an interception. Malik Neighbors, Giants wide receiver, 9 catches, 167, 2 touchdowns. Wan'Dale Robinson, 8 catches, 142 and a touchdown. We talked about it. Defensive issues. That's there we go. Thanks, Steve. I wanted to make sure you were watching to put up the thing. I was like, I don't think you heard me say defensive issues. So the secondary cornerback career, Elam, leads the NFL in receiving yards allowed. I can't remember what the number was. You put that up on Twitter yesterday or X. It looks like Trayvon Diggs is clearly not 100% yet. Deron Bland, who was out, and now Jerry Jones is saying may come back for the game on Sunday in Chicago. Clearly his absence was noticed. But to me, the play of the safeties, I mean, they're running a zone. And Nick, you've got guys running free and getting behind guys in a zone. Can you please explain to me how that's happening consistently?
Yeah. I wish I had a straight answer for you, Mac, but I don't.
Who's it on? Is it on the safety or is it on the corner? Is it a communication deal?
It's on everybody. And there were instances where they're running quarters, which, it kind of gives those 2 corners and it gives the safeties a quarter of the field that they have to account for. And whenever these routes are going over the top of their zones, they're not communicating on who actually is supposed to be taking these guys. And, it's unfortunate because with the way Eberflus's scheme is run, it's hard to really tell whose fault is on each play. That's probably something we won't be able to dive into until we talk to Eberflus on Thursday. But the safeties, I think you can point to on a lot of these over the top plays. I think about the 4th and 2 to Wan'Dale Robinson, where Donovan Wilson was supposed to get over. First off, Matt Eberflus running a 1 high safety look, and it's Donovan Wilson that's your 1 high safety. That's the issue in the beginning. But for Donovan Wilson not to be able to track Robinson all the way to the end zone and make sure that play doesn't happen, if that's an incomplete pass, they're on 4th and 4 on the 32-yard line with 2 minutes and 32 seconds left. If that's an incomplete pass, Cowboys win that game with a lot less drama than what we saw, and we get home on time, Mac. And I think Donovan Wilson was not supposed to be the guy in that position. Matt Eberflus put him in that position. I think about the long pass to Malik Neighbors in the that would have been in the first half. That was Trayvon Diggs. That was Trayvon Diggs, and typically during his career, what he likes to do is he likes to push out of phase on purpose. He likes to create a buffer between him and the receiver on purpose because he has such good recovery speed with his length to where he's able to close that gap really quickly and make a play on the ball, either as a deflection or an interception. But he's simply not there anymore. He's either not there anymore or he's not there yet, given that he's still figuring out how to get back onto the field and get his legs under him. I tend to lean toward the thinking that he's not there anymore. And so when that recovery speed is not at 100%, you see Malik Neighbors make that catch in the end zone. And, that's the second of many big balls that Russell Wilson had in that game. And then the Malik Neighbors pass in the final minute. You can credit that to a lot of people. I really credit that to a hell of a pass from Russell Wilson. It was unreal. Yeah. And the defense was not great, don't get me wrong, but it's hard to defend that much better given Russell Wilson's arm ability and Malik Neighbors' speed and box out ability. But overall, there are so many issues on this back end. It got to the point that Russell Wilson was just throwing it up by the end of the game because he knew one of his guys would probably come down with it. It ended up being the kryptonite because he threw it up a little too far in the overtime period. Donovan Wilson came down with the interception and helped lead to the game winner for the Cowboys. But overall, there's a lot to figure out in this secondary moving forward. Brian Schottenheimer did say on Monday that he thinks this is a 1-week fix. It's not a season-long issue. We'll see. I don't know if I buy that. I don't think they have the personnel right now to be able to figure it out in 1 week. I will say, though, you mentioned Deron Bland didn't play in that game. Mm-hmm. Of the 5 starting secondary defenders, we're talking about Kaiir Elam, Trayvon Diggs, Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, and then the guy who was filling in for Deron Bland and Reddy Stewart. I think Reddy Stewart played better than everybody else. I mean, he was
awful.
the guy that was on top of his assignments. He only allowed 3 receptions for 23 yards, according to PFF. Now, granted, that's a little flimsy given how the zone coverages and zone responsibilities were supposed to be taken. But I thought Reddy Stewart played fine. And I wonder if he plays well enough, does it get to a point maybe to where he becomes the new slot guy? And if Kyer Elam continues to struggle, that they put Deron Bland on the outside whenever he's ready to return. But
they're going to have to try because, I know this is going to become a narrative and we'll hit on it here in a minute, but if they, and they did against Philadelphia, that secondary, now they did have Bland. And I don't know, all of a sudden we've turned, Deron Bland into Lester Hayes or Deion Sanders or something, but they're going to have to do something because, and it is worth saying it's early in the season. Russell Wilson for a long time is a really good quarterback. And what we've seen with those older guys, every now and then they find it again. If you give them a little bit of time, and Russell Wilson, when he was younger, boy, and he's not the same guy anymore. He's just not. But every now and then, those older guys can pull out a throw. You're like, wow, and he could throw the prettiest deep ball. I mean, he could throw just this unique, high-arcing rainbow that gave his receiver a chance to make a play. And he did it in Seattle, and obviously it didn't work very well in Denver or Pittsburgh. But some of those throws, you're right, that was just a big-time throw. But in regards to the secondary, I don't know, man. I mean, they got cut up. Now, Malik Neighbors is no bum, but they got cut up in a way that makes you say, we got to do something else. Because if this is going to continue this way, we're in a ton of trouble.
You expect Malik Neighbors to put up that kind of yardage, but Wan'Dale Robinson?
No. Nope.
I'm sure look at you with a straight face, Mac. Wan'Dale Robinson?
Even during the game.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard me say, it. I was like, who the hell is Wan'Dale Robinson? Like, seriously, I knew Malik Neighbors. I knew that guy's good. So that one, like you said, you're like, okay, he's a good play. He's going to get his. But at the other one, you're like, what? How is Austin Reeves going off for 55 and 14 against us?
Yeah.
Speaking of wide receivers, Steve, put down your phone. The early return on George Pickens. The Cowboys made a splash in the offseason by trading for the temperamental former Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver, product of the University of Georgia. And so far this season, in 2 games, well, obviously it's too early to judge, although it's never too early to evaluate. Against the Giants, 5 catches, 68 yards, a touchdown, targeted 9 times. Didn't do a lot in week 1 at Philadelphia. Obviously, the touchdown was a big deal for him. He made a point to mention how important that was for him to get on the board. And he wanted to do that to obviously let people know he's here. What do you make so far of what George Pickens has provided for this offense, Nick?
Yeah, I think it's still a work in progress. And I say that because when Dak Prescott trusts a receiver, he will throw it into the tightest of windows. You saw it on Sunday with a pass to CeeDee Lamb that he put right in between Bobby Okereke and I believe it was Tyler Newman, the back end safety for the Giants. He was targeting CeeDee Lamb and he got it to CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb came down with it. There were a couple of times where he targeted Jake Ferguson, who had a career high in receptions on Sunday, and into some tight windows. We're not quite seeing that with George Pickens yet. And I think it's probably just going to take time to build that elite trust that Dak Prescott can get for a receiver. We saw it early in his career with Cole Beasley, where he would fit it into the tightest of windows and he would trust Cole to come down with it. Jason Witten, Des Bryant. But once Dak has that trust in you, that's when the production really starts to open up. I'm not sure if the trust is 100% there just yet. However, that doesn't mean that he has not been throwing it up. There were 3 end zone targets to George Pickens in that first half that, I think both of them could be, I think all 3 of them could be attributed to issues that both of them had in trying to connect on those plays. There was a couple times where Dak maybe forced it a little too much. There was one where Dak put a little bit too much air under it. There was another one where George Pickens didn't come back to the ball probably as quick enough. But in that second half, I think you saw momentum really start to build with that connection, and I think you're going to see that start to carry into future weeks. Next week's going to be a great opportunity, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But I think you're finally starting to see this duo hit its stride. But when that trust is built, and that could take probably 5 or 6 weeks, I don't think you're going to see the full potential of this connection until then.
Yeah, it's one of the realities of the way the off seasons are played now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can sit there and run routes against air all day, and that's great, and get to know guys and hang out and develop a relationship. But
Play
unless
ping
bullets are
pong.
flying, pardon?
Play ping pong.
Yeah, ping pong. There's another one. That's a great team bonding experience. But unless you're in it and bullets are flying and there's the stress of it and the emotions are there and the fatigue is there and the noise is there, then you really can't practice it.
Yeah.
Even as an observer, it took me a while to figure that out. That it's one thing to do it in training camp and against air and 7-on-7 and without pads and t-shirts and hats, and that's good. But until the stress of moments are there and you know how that person's going to react and you know how you're going to react and what you kind of need from each other to sort of make it work, then you're not doing anything. It is not a coincidence that after that game, the Cowboys defense, and specifically its front four, struggled somewhat. The Cowboys owner, Jerry Jones, did announce after the game that they have signed veteran free agent and former number 1 overall pick, Jadeveon Clowney, to a 1-year contract. Jadeveon was the first pick out of South Carolina several years ago. It's been his first seasons with the Texans where he was pretty good, and he's bounced around some other clubs since then, Seattle, and most recently Carolina last year. He was actually pretty good. He's 31 or 32, and, the one thing I remember one time when I was around him, he is an enormous guy. He's huge, but I think there's some pocket of Cowboy fans who think, okay, they've answered somewhat their pass rushing needs by picking up Clowney, needs created by the trade of Micah Parsons to Green Bay. I'm of a mind where I'm like, I don't know about that. I think this guy might be pretty good at setting an edge. He might be pretty good at doing some things against the run. To me, he's more replaced what DeMarcus Lawrence was bringing than Micah Parsons. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. I think he will bring you sack production. He had 9.5 sacks with the Ravens a couple of years ago. He had 4 last year with the Panthers. So the sack production can certainly be there. But yeah, you are seeing his big body on the edge, setting the edge, being able to be that plus run defender, that veteran run defender that can really help. I think this week you'll see him play a limited snap count. I think he will play on Sunday against the Bears. But as you see him get to 100%, I think this is a guy who should be starting. I think you should be starting Jadeveon Clowney so that he's playing on early downs against the run, and then you rotate in Dante Fowler. You rotate in Donovan Ezraku. They've been starting Dante Fowler, and it's the first time Fowler has been starting since his time in Jacksonville, if I recall correctly, and the sack production has not been there. The ball production has not been there, and that's been kind of an outlier considering how he has played over the course of the last 3 years. It's because he's a rotation guy. He's not a starter. He needs to be able to play kind of a flurry of snaps at different times so that he can have 100% max potential in his pass rush opportunities. And I don't feel like he's gotten those, especially in the second half of these last 2 games. You see a tired Dante Fowler. And I think if you rotate him in and out with Jadeveon Clowney, it's going to help both of those guys out quite a bit. And then on the other side, you can kind of have the young group of guys with Marshawn Nealon, Donovan Ezraku, Sam Williams, get after the passer on the other end. But I'm with you. It's more of a Lawrence replacement rather than a Parsons one.
One thing about older guys, a couple of things about them. You know what you're going to get in terms of preparation. Is he a pro? Is he going to be on time? Is he going to be an adult in the room? Obviously, I think Clowney would check all those boxes. Otherwise, I don't think teams would be interested in him at his age. But the fear with those guys is that you just never know when they get old, right? You just never know it in any sport. And with you talked about Fowler, I'm glad you brought that up, because too many times you see teams put that guy in a position to not succeed. And it doesn't mean he's a bum, but you can't put that guy in a position where he's going to be overexposed and you ask him to do too much. If you ask him to do what he's good at, now sometimes there are extenuating circumstances where you look around and say, man, you're all we got. But in this case, that's not it with Fowler. And we saw him when he was here a couple of years ago. He was pretty good, good enough that Washington brought him on, and he was really good and good enough to get another contract. But if you put him in a role that he hadn't been in for a while, that his body says, I probably just can't do this anymore, then you're asking for trouble. But if you put him in those limited I don't know, half the snaps of a game roll, he can still be a really effective player. And I think if you split that with these guys, and there's some other guys that are just limited. They're just not as good. Kenneth Murray. And we're not talking about Kenneth Murray's position, but I'm thinking of guys who are being asked to do things that they just didn't evaluate the position and get the better guy. Yeah. But with Fowler, it was frustrating for me because I'm like, why are you making this guy act like he's 22 anymore? He's not 22. Yeah. And if you can kind of split it, then you can get a productive player. So when we look at what Clowney's doing, what should we realistically expect? Forget numbers, but just in terms of the impact, high end, best case scenario, production wise for that side of the defense. What should we expect, Nick, out of that now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I don't think you should expect what, DeMarcus Lawrence is producing in Seattle. I don't think it's necessarily going to be to that level, but I think it's going to be kind of in that stratosphere. A guy that can really, like I said, really help seal the edge. He's going to be a plus run defender for this team. And I think he will have some sack production. I think, oddly enough, I think this defensive interior is going to help him out quite a bit on the outside. Kenny Clark and Osa Odighizuwa have been an awesome duo in this first couple of weeks. Kenny Clark being the return piece in the Micah Parsons trade. Mm-hmm. These guys push the pocket up. And Clowney's biggest issue in rushing the passer is that he gets way too wide sometimes, and he has to kind of come around a lot more. He has to cover a lot more ground than a guy who would get around a little bit more narrow. And if Kenny Clark and Osa Odighizuwa are pushing the pocket back like they have the last couple of weeks, then that kind of negates the issue that Clowney has in getting super wide, because it'll come around almost perfectly for him. So he talked about that a little bit yesterday. He's like, the depth of pocket that these guys do push back, it will allow me to, get to the quarterback. And when Kenny Clark was signed here, I called my agent and say, hey, let's call the Cowboys. And so that was a big reason why, communication really started to kick off between these two. I think you should expect plus run defending. You should expect average sack production.
Well, still, that's, you bring up a really good point about Clowney, because I think, Jadeveon Clowney's career is really interesting. And I'm going back to his time in high school, because he was one of those guys that was a transformative amateur NCAA player in terms of scheduling his workload in college for the pros. He was on the front end of doing that. And obviously everybody remembers him for his hit of a Michigan running back when he was in a bowl game at the University of South Carolina when he blew that guy up. And he's just a remarkable athlete. He is. But you talked about one thing that he did pass rush wise that I remember watching him in Texas, with the Texans rather, was just how wide he would get. I'm like, and that's, you don't want to say lazy, but you're asking yourself to do things athletically that's just not going to be there forever. And you can do it when you're younger, when you've got that first step, when you've got that burst, when you've got that strength. And at some point, you've got to adapt to that, because it's not going to be there forever. Yeah. And I'm not sure he ever really did. Now, he can stay, he's still a heck of a player. And he's still getting paid to play a lot of money to play football. So he's still a heck of a player. But it was the one part of his evolution as a player. I don't think he ever changed it. Whereas J.J. Watt, some other guys did that. And I don't think he ever did. But that said, if you're a Cowboys fan, you should be happy about that they went out and got this guy, and he wanted to be a part of your team. That's a plus, because he's at a place now where he can kind of pick and choose. And the fact that he selected Dallas, and specifically because they had Kenny Clark, says good things to me. All right, let's go on to the last topic, which is what on earth should we expect out of this team on Sunday at 3:30 when they play the Chicago Bears in Chicago? Dallas goes into that game a 1-point favorite. I don't know if you've seen that. Chicago.
I saw Chicago was a 1-point favorite yesterday.
I'm sorry. You're right. I misread it. I'm sorry. I saw the mine. You're right. Sorry. I'm looking at my little Yahoo screen. You're right. Chicago by 1, which really means Dallas is the favorite because the home team gets 3 points. The Bears look terrible so far, even though they have a new head coach, even though they have a second-year quarterback in Caleb Williams. They lose week 1, disappointingly, at home against Minnesota and J.J. McCarthy, why he was given the NFC Offensive Player of the Week, I'll never understand. Then the next week, Chicago hosts Detroit and gets destroyed, like 100-0 bad. The Bears are favorites, like you said. Thank you very much. Cowboys are going to be without starting center Cooper Beebe, who has suffered a high ankle sprain. Maybe
it's a lateral ankle sprain, and it's a bone fracture in his foot. That's why it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay, so that stinks. So he's out. The offensive line had some issues, especially the tackles against the Giants. Tyler Guyton was a little up and down. Terrence Steele, maybe not his best day at work. What do you? And then there's just sort of the high of playing pretty close against the Eagles, the low and the high of playing a very exciting game against the Giants, but ultimately winning. I have no idea what to think of this game because obviously Chicago needs a win bad, and they're playing at home. I have no idea what's going to happen here. Do you?
A lot of points.
Do you think there's going to be a boat race?
A lot of points. Take the over, and I think that's going to be kind of the MO for a lot of Cowboys games this year. The over/under is at 50 right now. I think it's more so going to be which team scores 50 first. I think that's probably close to what we're looking at. I mean, the Bears gave up 52 points on Sunday. We saw how the Cowboys defense looked. I think it's going to be pretty similar. The only thing that could get in the way of that is as of early forecast right now, it looks like there's going to be rain at Soldier Field on Sunday afternoon. So, that could maybe put a little bit more of a reliance on the ground game. I think either way, I think the Cowboys should be able to control this game. The Chicago Bears are without their best defender and Pro Bowl cornerback Jalen Johnson. Sounds like he's out for the year. I think there's going to be opportunities in the pass game, even more than what the Lions found against the Bears secondary last week. I think the ground game, I'm not scared of really anybody on that Bears front seven. I think the Cowboys will be able to control this game offensively.
Last question I want to ask you, and then we'll wrap this up. Give me your thoughts on Chicago Bears quarterback Caleb Williams. Now, obviously, he started out like a ball of fire in college, kills at Oklahoma, goes and wins the Heisman at USC, has some issues about maturity and, painting fingernails and Utah sucks or whatever else. Then there's questions about the dad. Quarterback dad is not a new phenomenon. He is selected number 1 by the Bears. It's kind of up and down. Coach gets fired, gets a new coach. Now they're 0-2. Obviously, he's got a tremendous arm, just a tremendous arm, and he's a great athlete. What do you make of him? And part 2, what do you make of what's going on with the quarterback in Austin and Arch Manning?
I'll start with Caleb. I think he needs an offensive line. He's had an offensive line for most of his career, and you saw him last year. He's really good at being able to scramble and make things happen out of nothing. But when you're being crashed by that many NFL defensive linemen, it's tough to really sustain. And so he was sacked more times than anybody in the NFL last year. He's on pace to do that again this year. I think he needs a quality offensive line to really be able to open up those playmakers that he has, because, boy, they have them. Rome Odunze, Luther Burden, they have some talent, and I think Rome Odunze is going to be a problem for the Cowboys in this matchup. But until he gets a quality offensive line, I don't see the Bears as a playoff team. Arch, man, I don't know what happened over the offseason. I don't know if he's dealing with an injury in his shoulder. That's going to be my theory until it's proven otherwise. But it is bad. It is bad. It's strange because you look at his mechanics from footwork all the way up to his release point.
Yeah.
Everything is different than what we saw last year in his 2 starts against UL Monroe and Mississippi State. Something is not right, and I don't know what it is, but they don't have a lot of time to fix it. They have one more gimme game against Sam Houston State, and then it's into the gauntlet of the SEC schedule. They travel to Florida to open it up, so they're gonna have to figure that one out quick.
You mentioned it, and I've tried to defend because I went on shows and stuff, and I said I think he's going to be terrific, based on the 2 games that I'd seen him play last season when he started for Quinn Ewers. And that's the baffling part to me. And you do see young passers sometimes. I've seen Josh Hoover do it at TCU. They drop the arm slot down, do a sidearm. And every now and then you're like, okay, maybe that's not the best idea, but you can get away with it. You're seeing more quarterbacks do that now. You mentioned Caleb Williams has kind of done that. We've seen Lamar Jackson do it. But the part that's baffling to me, it's the footwork. And I'm like, what happened to you? Now, if he's hurt, if he's playing with an injury, which to me, I think his head coach needs to say he's playing with something.
Yeah.
He needs to say, listen, it's not that bad. He can play through it. He's going to be okay. But I just can't get over it. I can't recall seeing anything like that, where a kid who looked like he knew how to play the position really well from a footwork and mechanic standpoint, now all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what happened here?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to bet against a Manning quarterback. I'm just not. I know that's popular. I know they lost some serious weapons down in Austin. They replaced some guys, receivers, running back. They lost some guys.
Their receiver room's awful.
It's not. And they had some good ones for the last couple of years. So I think there is some of that going on here. And losing, but running backs usually you kind of have them on a conveyor belt. But I got to tell you, I'm baffled by this just by looking at some of those throws, and I'm like, why are your feet like that?
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. I know it sounds ridiculous, Nick, but I'm like, even I know that.
Yeah.
But anyways, it'll be interesting to watch. All right, for all your Cowboys coverage needs, make sure to chase our Emmy winner on Twitter. Has over 50,000 followers. I have 35,000 fewer. Those are Nick's words, not mine. He is Nick Harris. He'll be in Chicago for the Cowboys at Bears, 3:30 on Fox. For all of your other Cowboys and sports coverage needs, be sure to keep us here on StarTelegram.com.
We got to pick.
Oh, we do have to pick. I'm sorry. You're right. We both sucked last week. You're 1-1.
Yeah. Are we going against the spread here?
No, both. Yeah, well, we got to do that. So well, thank you for mentioning that. So you were 2-0 in week 1. And you went 0-2 last week.
1-1 last week. I picked the Cowboys to win.
But you did. I thought you picked them to cover. You did.
I thought you were talking like between winning and spread. I was 2-0 in week 1.
Yes, you were.
Week two, 1-1.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, whatever it is, I got the spread
that's
wrong.
True. Week 1, you were 2-0. Week 1, you were 2-0. Week 2, you were 1-1.
There we go.
I think So I'm 1-1 in week 1, and I was 0-2 last week. So we're going to be yielding to your expertise. Bears by 1. What you got?
Yeah, give me the Cowboys to win. I think Cowboys major line or whatever it is, whatever they call it.
Money line?
Money line. There you go.
There you go.
Not a betting guy.
I'm with you. I've learned my lesson. I'm just going to do whatever. No, I think you're right. I think they're going to win this game. And even though this one scares me, if the Bears were 1-1, I'd be less scared. Yeah. The fact that they're 0-2, I'm like, that's a wounded animal. So, and if it's raining, well, you never know. But I'm with you. I'm not digging the Bears right now. Give me Dallas to go to 2-1. I expect to see a different Michael Jordan team next week, like a Wizards cap. You're not a Jordan guy.
I'll have to really think about it. I'll have to really think about it.
All right. It was good talking to you. Thanks, Steve, for producing as always. For all your Cowboys coverage needs, check us out on StarTelegram.com. For Cowboys Overtime, we will see you next week.